Welcome Fred McRae from Job One Career Coaching to share a little bit about finding your state job. This is the introductory session to state jobs. We are about to go into about 2.5 hours of state job learning. Yes, it is that hard and complicated. But what we're going to do is simplify it for you today. And so please help me welcome Fred McRae from Job One Career Coaching for getting started finding your state job. Fred?
Well, good morning. My name is Fred McRae, and I've worked for the state for 37 years and retired in 2011. I highly recommend it at some point in your life. But we're here to helpfully to help you find a state job. And the information about Job One Career Coaching, which is free to anyone. Most of us are volunteers that are either retired or still currently working. And we meet every Monday between 9 and 11:30. And there's our ZIP ID number if you want to join us. So the state of California is some of the information that we'll be talking about is, first of all, my background is about 16 of those 37 years was as a hiring supervisor and also as a manager. I will be sharing some information about the state of California, information about level of education you need to qualify for some of the job titles or what they call classifications. We'll be taking steps 1, 2, and the third step, the application side, will be covered by the State Lottery Commission staff. But we will be covering searching out different job titles or classifications and also assessment of your qualifications to take the civil service exam for each of those job titles. If you have any questions, let Sarah know because I'll probably be pushing through the time limitations that we have for the information we need to share, or raise your hand and hopefully I'll notice that, or at least Sarah will. You're welcome to take pictures on your cell phone, or if you'd like, use a Word document like I do sometimes and do a controlled screen print and then paste it over to Word document, and you can look at the slides later in your leisure. State of California has about 600 different career paths that you can take. Some of them are kind of just one deep. Other career paths are up to maybe 10 deep. Typically, there's about 200 departments and agencies within the state of California. 233 or 36 people, or 1,000 people, state workers throughout the state of California, making it one of the largest employers within the state. There's about 58 counties statewide that you could possibly work for within those counties and within the state. Just to give you the level of complexity, there's 4 million people, residents that reside in California, that the state workers are responsible for various services and public safety. The job titles, qualifications, oftentimes will indicate what level of education is required and what level of experience that you need for those particular job titles and duties that you'd be performing. So everything from high school up to a person with a PhD can apply for the state of California. To give you an example, there we go. High school, these are some of the job titles that you can apply for at the high school graduation level. There's 2 pages worth. And it comes up to a little over 100 job titles that you can apply for. Next. Okay. Uh, all right. So 2 years of college will net you these particular job titles. As you can see, they're a little bit different than the high school level. Next, thank you. There's about 210 different job titles within these 2 pages. And then moving on to the 4-year college, we have these career job titles that you can qualify for. And it goes on for 6 pages, which is a little over 400 different job titles. All right. So just to touch on the veterans, because they're near and dear to my heart since I served in the Navy for 4 years, and thank you for your service. But in April 2015, Senate Bill 112 was passed for the California Veterans Bill of Rights. That allows them to take examinations, and if they qualify with the 70% or higher on the scoring, they automatically get elevated to the 95 percentile, which puts them in rank 1. That's the maximum number of score. In the past, they used to go by points, and so you can actually go over 100 points back in the day. Typically, you would be able to use that as a veteran one time as a kind of get your foot in the door, and that would qualify you for both open exams, which means they're exams that people can take from outside the state that have no or little knowledge about state service, and also promotional, which would mean that you'd have to be working with the state unless you're a veteran. So we can either use this veteran preference now to get your foot in the door, or after you've taken the exams, promote up. Typically, you would need, for veteran status, you would need your DD-214, which is the honorable discharge form, as well as the Cal HR form 1093 form, which you would submit to the Department of Human Resources, and then it would validate through the VA office your veteran's preference, and that would put into the record in calcareers.ca.gov. So also, if there are any veterans out there that are seeking employment, there's also EDD, Employment Development Department with the state of California, that helps out the veterans through what they call VetNet program, that helps train them for getting a job, and also offers incentives to employers for hiring the veterans. If you were to go over to Cal Careers, next, it would look like this. You'd click on the veteran button up on top, which would take you to the link where you can find the information about your veteran preference. As it indicates here, you need your DD-214 and the Cal HR 1093 form that you'd submit to the California Department of Human Resources at that address. Next. Okay. Going over to calcareers.ca.gov, there's the main website that you can go to. And if you notice, there are several different ways of clicking on buttons. So if you go over to the get a state job, or if you go down to the larger buttons in the middle of the web page, you see a get a state job, and then right next to it is state employees. And if you go up to the top there, there's a smaller version of that button up there called state employees. There's a veteran button next to that, and it coincides with the veterans button down below. Persons with disability, if you go up from the larger button to the smaller button, there's a similar connection, so you can push on either of those. And then also state retirees, if you want to continue working for the state, you can get rehired as a state retired annuitant. So just to give you a clue as to what these buttons are, if you scroll down to the next slide, there's a series of what do you call them? Buttons down there where the red highlight is. If you click on the work for California, and if you slide, this will appear. This is why work for California. And then it goes in, if you press each of these buttons in the tan sort of color, you'll see great benefits. There are great benefits to be had: health, dental, and vision care, along with extra retirement with the California Public Employees Retirement System, which is about $600 billion strong in assets. It's one of the best retirement systems in the United States for public employees. I think some of the counties are also joined with CalPERS, or at least this teacher's retirement system, and both of them are strong. As I mentioned, there's also purpose behind going into a particular career, so that should help you. And then if you slide down another slide, please. All right. It gives you various events that occur for career fairs that are available, that are being offered. And if you go down another slide.
Just really quick, there's a question. Do the veteran forms need to be mailed in, or can they be electronically submitted?
Let's see. I believe there's a way of electronically submitting it. If you put it into a PDF as a scan and attach it to an email, they should be able to receive it.
Thank you. Probably not the original forms, a copy of the forms, Nathan.
Copies are fine.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I don't have my original, but there are websites you can go to acquire your DD-214. I know sometimes they get lost in transition and move, so there's always that available to you.
I actually believe, Nathan, it's uploaded to your CalCareers account, but let's work on that. We'll ask in a little bit.
Okay. Okay. If you continue going down, you'll see a series of mini tutorials that are about anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes long. That kind of gives you a clue about how to get started with the state. The LEAP program, which will be discussed a little later in this series of sessions, and then also how to fill out your state application, which will also be covered today. All right, if you click on the view more, there's additional events that are occurring as well, so that's a possibility. Next slide. All right, so if you click back, you'll go back to the main menu, and this is kind of where we're covering the format by doing this search for the various careers that you want to get into. And then once you find the career that you want to get into through the job title or classification, then you go over to that specific classification and you want to do an assessment of your qualifications to find out if you meet the minimum qualifications for applying for that position and taking the civil service exam. Next. All right. And if you click over to get a state job, you'll see these steps that you can go in more detail as far as identifying each of those different steps. Next. Okay, so when you click on get a state job, you'll notice that it says get a state job, which indicates that you're in the right place. And then you can either search through the general website where that spyglass is, that search glass, However, you'd have to know the specific job title. And if you're new to state service, you may not know, so you would use the advanced job search or the geographical job search. And then once you find the job title that you are interested in applying for, then you go to the third button over there. That's the exam assessment search. And that'll take you to the specific exam for that particular job title. Next. All right. Again, you're under the Get a State Job. And then under that, we're going to go specifically to the Advanced Job Search. Next. All right. So when you go over there, there's a series of filters or searches that you can do by certain things. For instance, by department. As I mentioned, there's over 200 departments. So if you know a specific department, like if you're into financial issues, accounting, account clerk type functions, then you may want to go over to Franchise Tax Board, something of that nature, or corporate taxes. Next. All right, job categories. There's 22 job categories that kind of cover most of the job titles. So you could go over there and find the particular job. For instance, since I have a Bachelor of Science degree in business administration, I would go over to business and financial operations occupations, and that should give you a list of titles. We won't go over there. That's this particular point because it goes pretty broad in the way that they perceive the different job titles. So let's go to the next one, or classification. Okay, under classification, it'll be in alphabetical order by the job title that you're going for. So that's a listing there, but there's probably over 600 different career paths associated with that. You can go down readily available if you know more specifically what particular classification or job title it would be. But there's over 4,500 different classifications within the state of California. Next. Thank you. Location, there's 58 different counties within the state of California. Most of the jobs are localized to the state capital. However, if you're just focused on Sacramento, that could be good, but also consider West Sacramento in Yolo County because there are some state agencies just on the other side of the river that are represented. Other questions?
Yes, we have one that we might want to take offline. I do have a comment saying that the DD 214 does need to be mailed in. And I will share the link with more information with the whole group. Thank you, Diana, for that. And then I have a question about someone that has worked in healthcare finance but has a bachelor's degree in computer technology. A specific question about what positions would be good. So perhaps you can answer that question at the end of the presentation.
Actually, it'll be just a little further along in the location. The geographical portion, we'll be covering that particular part of it.
Perfect. So hang tight. We'll be right there.
Yep, we will.
Thank you, Fred.
All right. Next. All right. So posting is the posting of a particular job vacancy that a department has put into this section of Cal Careers. And it could be 1 day old, 2 days old, 7 days old, 14 days old, or 30 days old, or much older, say 60 to 90 days. Typically, if it goes over, I would say 60 days, I would check with that particular department to find out in the human resources whether that particular job vacancy is still available. It could be that somebody forgot to remove it from the listing. Next. All right. Work types. So work types, you can either work as a permanent person or as an intermittent, which means you work up to 12 months per year. That time could be extended for an additional 12 months, but typically after under limited term, one who has gone 2 years as a limited term, the department must determine whether they need to end their employment because of the termination after the limited term after 2 years, or they need to hire you on a permanent basis. Typically, we'd use this particular function or time base to determine somebody's qualifications. And if the economy is kind of in the tank, you might say, with the state of California, because sometimes they don't have the revenue they anticipated, so they have to kind of cut back in certain areas. So they may hire you on a limited term basis just to see if they can hire you on a more permanent basis 12 months later when the economy picks up a little bit better. As it mentions, retired annuitants can come back to work for the state of California. Okay, and non-tenured would be basically somebody who has no tenure, but is being hired maybe under contractual agreements. Next, please. The work schedule is based on full-time, which would be 40 hours per week typically, and you would be paid at the end of the month after you've worked that time period. So you have to be kind of disciplined with your finances because you only get paid once a month. But if you're thrifty and are wise with your finances, you should be able to work from month to month and raise a family, as I did. Part-time work would be anything over 20 or so hours, would also give you benefits, but a lot of people are considering working part-time since COVID, and so that's a possibility. Intermediate is what my son is doing right now with the Parks and Recreation group. He works 1,500 hours on a yearly basis. And at the end of that, they can determine whether they want to continue having him work. He's going into his second year with his 1,500 hours. Each year it's renewed, and they have to determine whether they're going to continue working you or if the workload is sufficient not to work you. Again, an annuitant is somebody who's been retired from the state of California who wants to be rehired for maybe some additional funds. Next. All right. If you want to consider level of salary that you'd be acceptable to work for, this is a monthly salary range. And so we click on that to determine what your salary minimum would be with the state of California. Typically, they go into various steps. It goes from the lowest step to an upper step in about 6 months or 12 months, depending on your probation period. And then there's merit salary increases for at least the next 4 or 5 levels, at which time you max out and you have to determine whether you're satisfied with the maximum amount or if you want to promote. I chose to promote because I was raising a family, and it was beneficial for me to get the higher income over a period of time until I was retired, at which time I ended up getting 86% of my income. And they say you can retire with about 75% of your income. Next, please. All right, the way you can apply with the state of California used to be that you'd use the postal service, and you'd have to get there to the post office and have them post stamp it the day, at least the day of or the day before the final filing date or the final deadline date. It's important to know that because if you don't have the date stamped on the day of or the day before the final filing date, they will not accept your application. So make sure you get those things in on time or early. Nowadays, you can do it electronically, which would also already put a date timestamp on it when you send it and when the department receives your application. There's also something called drop-off, which means they require that you go to a specific location, whether that be within Sacramento or other cities, because they're having difficulty recruiting in those smaller cities. So what you might want to do is drive over there, drop off the application. In some cases, they actually have the exam the next day. So you may have to stay the night in order to take the exam. Most of the time, there's spot exams at various locations where it's difficult to recruit. So you can send your application in through electronics, through postal service, or physically drop off your application at a particular location, however they want it done. Next. All right, let's go back over to Get a State Job. And here we're going to be clicking on the geographic job search, which is actually, I think, a lot easier. So next slide. If you click on that, you'll come over here to a alphabetical listing of the different counties. And for instance, in the southern area, like I think Kern County's up north, Kings County, and each of those, and if you look over to the right side of the column, are the different vacancies that are available at these different counties. Some of them have only like 2 vacant positions in them, like Lake County, whereas Los Angeles has 350 15 job vacancies that are posted in Los Angeles County. If you go up to Placer, which was near and dear to our hearts that we just listened to earlier by Jed, they had 18 state of California jobs that are vacant at this particular time. And then Riverside down south, 163, and Sacramento has 1,846 vacancies out of the 5,408 vacancies throughout the state of California at the time that I took this picture of this county. Next. So if you click on Sacramento County, it'll appear like this. And you can see that it starts out with the accountant 1 specialist position. If you were to scroll down through, you'll see all those in somewhat alphabetical order. You'll notice that this particular person would be doing a mail processor in their particular area. They have a salary range of $3,600 to $4,600 per month. They'd be working for the Department of Health Care Services in the Sacramento County. And currently it was posted on February 1st, 2023. And currently they have a final filing or deadline date of 2023. So this is about a year old in that information. Sorry about if you were to click on group jobs by class, that smaller rectangular there, if you were to scroll down past that, click on it. Next slide. You would come up with this. And for the person that's asking about IT, I'm about ready to share that with you. So here we start out with 1,848 vacancies that are in the Sacramento area, and these vacancies can change daily. It could be more or less, but typically in Sacramento, there's about that many vacancies that are posted every week. Now, for instance, accountant 1 specialist, there's 4 vacancies if you look over to the right on the column. Now, if you were to click on the or scroll down further down through, next slide. you'll notice that a typical job that most people qualify for, if they have a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science degree, they could qualify for the Associate Governmental Program Analyst, which currently had 151 vacancies available to it in the Sacramento area. If you're into personnel transactions, you can go over to Associate Personnel Analyst, and there's 16 vacancies at that particular job title. Next slide. So we'll go back to HOT, Associate Governmental Program Analyst, as one of the key things that people get hired for within the state of California. For the person with the IT background, and they currently have these job offerings. The information officer is actually like a PR, public relations person for a particular department, and they send out news information about a particular department that has a particular project or social impact or public safety impact that it may have on the public. And so they need information officers. So it's not related to information technology. Information technology, on their hand, you can start out as an associate, and there's currently 37 vacancies for that. There's the Information Technology Manager 1 and Manager 2 has 26 and 6 vacancies, respectively. And then there's the Information Technology Specialist 1, 2, and 3 levels. And that would also have a Information Technology Supervisor 2 that's associated with that. Sum total, there's about 314 vacancies that are posted on the information technology. Does that help with the person who is asking that question? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
We did have one question with regard to applying for positions that are lower than your skill. So let's say you have the skill for the IT manager 2. Does it hurt or help you to apply for the IT manager 1 in the long run?
It's always good to kind of take the lower level, because that will get your foot in the door if you have the qualifications for it. They're always looking to determine whether you're overqualified or underqualified or just rightly qualified.
And then we do have a quick question. What's the difference between CalCareers and CalJobs? CalJobs is actually the unemployment site where you can look for a job. It is not state jobs specifically. However, there may be state jobs on there. CalCareers is specifically California state employment only.
Yep.
I hope that helps, but if not, ask a follow-up question and I will chat with you.
Yeah, and just an addendum to that is there's USA Jobs, which is a federal arm of employment.
Yes, we have a presenter from USA Jobs coming at, I believe, 1 o'clock today.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Covered
Thanks,
all
Fred.
Great.
Little
All
plug early.
there you go. All right, next, please. All right, so we've covered some of the search engines that you can use to identify specific job titles or classifications. Let's go on to step 2, which is assessing your education, your experience, your knowledge, your skills associated with taking civil service exams. The reason for the civil service exam process is because there was a lot of nepotism going on back in the 40s, 50s, and kind of squeaking into the 60s. And dad was working with their offspring, who was working with their cousins, which was working with their uncles. And so it got to be kind of ridiculous. So they finally went to a civil service exam process. It used to be back in the day where you'd have to go over to a school that had a gymnasium or a cafeteria, you would have to physically go there, take the test, and they'd make sure that who you were who you said you were, by making sure you had appropriate ID before you sat down and before they said, okay, open your books and take the test, and they'd be timed. Nowadays, though, in the comfort of your home, most civil service exams are posted online, so you can take them and push the submit button and get the results right then and there within about a minute or two after you've taken the exam. So it's much more convenient, but you do have to qualify for taking the exam for that particular job title. So I'm going to pick on the Associate Governmental Program Analyst. Next slide. And so you go back to the Get a State Job, and you want to go over to the Exam Assessment Search portion. So you click on it. Next slide. And when you click over there, you find the Associate Governmental Program Analyst under the classification, and it's in alphabetical order. So as you scroll down through that, and you come up with the Associate Governmental Program Analyst, you go down to Search, where that rectangle is down there. Click on that, and next slide. And you come up with the Associate Governmental Program Analyst. They have an exam code. They have the type of exam it is. In this case, it's an open exam. Normally, somebody coming in from the outside without any state job experience could not take a promotional exam if that says promotional. So you'd have to consider taking an open exam like this one is. It was established back in 2009. It has no final filing date on it. It's open, which means it's when it says until filled, that means that the exam is open until they close it, which is a good thing that it says until filled. Click on the View Exam Posting. So you click on that. Next slide. It'll come up with this. So you make sure that it's the Associate Governmental Program Analyst. It'll also say at the top, exam postings. And then if you go down, you'll see that it's still final filing dates, still out towards the end of December. And when I looked last year, it actually said December 31st, 2023. So they continue to renew this exam. So if you go down a little further, scroll down, next slide, you'll see that it says where to apply. It'll say, click on the link below to see the official exam bulletin. They're lying to you about this. It's actually another link that will take you to a 6-page bulletin. So we go over there to the next slide. And you'll see the first page says Associate Governmental Program Analyst. Make sure you're right on the right exam. In this case, it's a statewide open exam. And then if you scroll down to the next page, you'll see page 2 says the minimum qualifications. So under any of these qualifications will allow you to take the exam. So in this case, the thing that might qualify you is the educational portion that I have highlighted in red in the smaller rectangle. It says the following education is required when general experience is used to qualify at any level, equivalent to graduation from college. And that's typically year for year. So that's for every year of college, you would have the equivalent of 1 year of experience associated with that. And if you didn't qualify there, then you'd have to qualify for something else, one of the other portions. So you can either be working for the state for 1 year experience as a staff service analyst, range C, which is pretty high up there because there's a range A, range B, and eventually range C. There's also another option you can have is if you have 3 years of experience professionally performing the analytical experience and duties associated with either budgeting, managing, and analysis, personnel planning, program evaluation, or policy analysis. So if you're in one of those areas, then you have analytical experience, you could qualify under that cycle. So any questions about that? So they have several different options that you have available to you. Okay, if not,
You're all good with questions.
okay, good. All right, next. All right, so we go back to this page and we're going down to page 4. And this particular page refers to veteran preference application to make sure that you have your veterans points in there. If you choose to use that Cal HR 1093 form along with your DD 214, there is an exam information. It says preview the training and experience evaluation. I'd strongly recommend that you go over there. It's kind of like a practice test. And so you want to go over there first, because if you go to the real test, the official test exam, then you may not have the information available to you. And a lot of times these exams are timed out after 1 or 2 hours. So you want to make sure you have all the information available to you before you take the official exam. So click on the blue portion of that. And when you click on it, it'll take you over to the next slide. And that slide shows this. So to go back to that former page with the Associate Governmental Program Analyst with the 6 pages, you would click on the examination link. However, we want to stay here for a bit because it's going to give the Associate Governmental Program Analyst statewide, and it shares some information with you. And if we go to the next slide, it will actually show you the similar type questions that they would be asking you on the official exam. So under this, there's 28 questions total that will be asked of you. And you want to make sure you have all the answers ready to go before you go back to the official exam. So part of the questions they're going to ask you is experiential questions. What was the length of time that you've done this particular task? So like question 1 says, facilitating meetings with groups and teams to coordinate and meet project, program, and organizational objectives. So if you have experience doing that, you would put down the level of experience, either 0 to 6 months, 6 months to 1 year, 1 year to 2 years, 2 years to 3 years, or over 3 years. The other thing they want to know is at what level of task were you doing these things? Not at all under the direction, or at least being an assistant, working independently, or actually having enough expertise to train others, or you yourself being referred to as an expert. So they're going to weight these responses based on your response to each of those questions. And then at the end, they're going to summarize it with a calculator to come up with a particular percentage and also the ranking that you're going to be at. Ranking was already kind of mentioned earlier by the county of Placer. And so it's similar, but the state actually does a rule of 3 ranks, as I recall. So moving down to the next slide, to the 3rd page, you'll see here's questions 23 through 28. So make sure you take this pre-test before you take the official exam. So clicking back up to the top to go back over to the AGPA 6 page, you'll come up with this. And you scroll down to the page 5 and page 6. And next slide. All right. Question? Do all exams?
Yes, actually, do all exams have a preview or practice test?
Yes. And you definitely want to take that first.
Are you sure? It might have information about the test, but it might not have an actual test.
Um,
I feel like there's a couple that don't, but we'll circle. Let's look
yeah,
at that,
let's.
and I'll try and do that while you're finishing.
Okay. All right. So here's the official exam. So it'll say taking the examination. So you go down where the blue highlight is, and if you were to click on it, it'll take you to the official exam. And typically, after you've taken the exam, you have 12 months where it will expire and you have the opportunity to take the exam again, hopefully with additional year that will give you a higher score next time around. Typically, you can have a score of 70% up to 95%, and a ranking of anywhere from rank 1, 2, 3, or more. Typically, your best shot would be ranks 1, 2, and 3. Similar to the county, the department that's hiring a particular job title can actually hire within the first 3 ranks without actually interviewing if they so choose. Typically, though, at least in my case, as a hiring manager, I would invite various people at various ranks, whoever responded to my the vacancy posting. I would review their state application to determine their qualifications and how close they adhere to what I posted as a job description or duty statement. The closer they get to it, the better their chances are of me calling them in for an actual job interview. So as soon as you've taken the official exam and you push the submit button, within about a minute or two, you should get a score and a ranking. That's a snapshot in time. So you want to take a picture of that or print it out as what your results are for being eligible to apply for associate governmental program analyst positions. Now, each job title has its own exam process. So typically hires from the time you submit your application could take anywhere from 2 to 4 months, depending on the complexity of the hire process. So there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. It has to go through the affirmative action office. It has to go through a variety of reviews and approval processes before the person can call you back and say, we'd like to offer you a conditional offer of employment, which means you fill out additional paperwork. There may be a background check that you have to go through in order to be approved to come work for the state of California. So next slide. All right. So when you click on that official examination link, it'll take you over to here, Associate Governmental Program Analyst, Examination Information. And here you can find out additional information from each of these links. When you press the continue, down at the bottom, that's kind of obscured. Go ahead, next slide. You'll see this agreement, terms of agreement. Basically, they want to affirm that you are the person who is taking the exam. If they find out otherwise, they can actually remove you from that examination and from that list, even though you passed it. So you want to be as truthful as possible with your duration of time and the level of qualifications that you put in there. They oftentimes will find that out later as they go through the interview process. So even though you've passed this exam, there's still a probationary period that is still part of the exam process, you might say, that if you don't pass probation, you still can be terminated from that position. The probationary period is to find out how well you work with the department and how well the department works with you. So some of the other questions they could ask is, I may be removed from the exam if something is not correct. Another question they have is, I am solely responsible for the accuracy in the responses I provide. So they do offer that. Next slide. So that is the continue button. So if you haven't filled out your application, state application for filling out to prepare to take the exam, and then you need to fill out the state application process and make sure you focus on the fact to address the minimum qualifications for that exam. That's important to know because you will fill out the exam differently than if you were applying for an actual vacant position after you pass the official examination process. So any questions? Let's go back one. Any questions related to things up to this point as far as getting a state job, researching out the different job titles, what your qualifications could be?
We had one question about how soon you can expect to be contacted for an interview, but we're going to cover that in the next session. But if you want to quickly touch on it, what the process is once they've applied for a job.
Sure. Okay. So go back up to the search engine, and I would recommend at least going to calcareers.ca.gov at least once a week if you're a job seeker. And in doing that, you would go to that particular job that you think you would qualify for. Not for the exam because you already passed that. You're eligible to start applying as soon as you pass the exam. You can start applying for different vacancies. So let's say you submit to Department of General Services, where I worked at one point. And so I'd have to submit that, and depends on whether it's electronic or actually doing a postal, send that in through U.S. Postal Service. Again, making sure that you go up to the counter and have somebody stamp that particular date on there, the day of or the day before the final filing date. That's what they go by on the envelope. Okay. And then somebody reviews it, kind of have an image in your mind that you have your state application here. And then on the other hand, that person is reviewing your application. They're looking at the posted job description or duty statement. And they're looking at some keywords between the two of them. If there's keywords that are key functions or key skills that they're looking for in that individual that they sent out, they posted looking for that particular person, if they find it in your application, there's a good chance they'll call you in for a job interview. If you try to do what they call boilerplate or just make one generic application and send it in to all the different vacancies that you think you're going to qualify for, you're going to see right through it because it's not addressing the particular task titles and functions of that job that they have posted. So you want to customize it or tailor it to those keywords. By doing that, that will cause you to possibly get a job interview. That's the next step. Okay, and this could take a period of time anywhere from 1 month up to 4 months. As I mentioned before, a lot of times they have certain requirements they're looking for in a particular person. And so it may take a while for them to find that person to meet those qualifications that they have posted. Does that help?
Yes, I think that's great. We did have a couple of other questions, follow up. I think there's some confusion about ranking. The rank is given to you. You don't write it in. But maybe Fred, you can cover that a little bit more about what the ranking 1, 2, 3 means and according to your score and how that applies to
Okay,
whether you're considered.
sure. The county mentioned that they have a rule of 3 ranks or 5 ranks, which is pretty cool that they do that. Typically, after you've taken the exam, it's based on percentage, and based on from your percentage, they give you a ranking. And as the county does, it could be anywhere from 1 person up to several hundred people per rank. Typically, when the state, they will get a list of the listing of people that qualify, and it's randomly selected. So part of the reason I recommend that you don't wait till they contact you, that you search out the job vacancies, you find the qualifications that meet to your best knowledge, education, skill, and experience levels and talents. And you want to include those as part of your application and customizing it. The ranking is based on rule of 3 ranks typically. And so the ranks would be rank 1, 2, or 3. Something that I can also mention is if you're in rank 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, don't get discouraged, because if you're in the lower ranks, even though you may not be reachable, a lot of people are only interested in permanent full-time. However, a lot of people are not interested in part-time, limited term, or temporary type positions. So you could apply for those to get your foot in the door, and that will qualify you for a work of experience that you can put on your state application at the end of your employment, at the end of those termination dates. So you can say you worked for 9 months or 12 months, a year with the state of California as a limited term individual, and that would qualify you and get somebody's attention that you were working for the state of California at one time or another. So rank 1, 2, and 3 are preferred, because somebody can hire you from any one of those 3 ranks. However, 4, 5, 6, and 7, or 4, 5, 6, and 7 beyond, you have a pretty good chance in the lesser time periods of employment to work. So I'd recommend that anybody in those ranks would start applying for any of the part-time limited term type positions. Does that help?
And we had one more question. How does someone doing a big career switch properly attest to their skills in this examination process when the previous job was quite a bit different, but they still meet the minimum qualifications? Like, let's say they do have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in one area. How does that transfer into being qualified for the position they're looking at?
Okay. I would say look at your transferable skills, talents, and abilities, how they would match up. Even though, let's say you were in a teaching profession, communication is very important. And it's also very important if you want to get into the analytical classification or into a managerial classification. Writing skills, verbal skills, analytical skills are still required. So look at the transferable skills and abilities that you have that are transferable from one to the other. If you worked with policy, procedures, laws, and rules in say, a private sector, even though they don't match up with maybe some of the state's policy and procedures and laws and rules, you at least had the ability to research, to determine what policy is the best policy and you applied it. Those principles are still the same, whether it's private sector or public sector.
I second that. You've transferable skills is that hot topic, and if you have questions about your transferable skills, please come visit me in the Golden Sierra booth tomorrow, and we can walk it through or connect after the event to work through all of that stuff. With that, I think we are out of time.
Yep.
So I wanted to put up really quick. Do you want to talk about this, Fred, or can I give you a
Very
shout
quickly. Okay.
out?
Yeah. So we meet every Monday, 9 to 11:30. We use the Zoom media, and you can get us at 910-283-386. There's no passcode. A host will let you in, and we have these different topics we talk about. We have a job interview preparation topic. We have a personal inventory topic. So if you're not quite sure where you want to be or what you want to do, this topic might help you out as a presentation. We go into STAR stories, which are typical of how you would structure your response to job interviews, marketing yourself, elevator pitch. All those are important. Networking. We have a class on basic LinkedIn, how to fill out your resume to do better, things like that that will help you out. And we
I
also have a topic on panel exercises. What do panels think in regards to you as the job interviewee? There you go. Thank you
Thank you,
for
Fred.
having
And
me.
I want to say too, I find that the Job One sessions are both encouraging as well as helpful in so many different avenues. You have people that are giving of their time. It's completely volunteer run and really amazing how they can get you from step A to all the way to hired. So definitely hop on a Zoom call at least once on a Monday morning and get your week started off with this wonderful team. Again, thank you, Fred, so much for all of the wealth of knowledge that you offer and your help today. We really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for having me.
I would love to